everybody, this is Kevin and welcome back to our next installment in the Estes K-Series rocket builds. Today's rocket is something very similar yet very different than the last episode. Last episode we did the K2 Mark. Today we're going to be doing the K2A Mark II. I'll explain a little bit about that. After the K2 came out in the early 60s, it was widely popular. It was a whole new technology than this K1 Scout was for sure. But over the decade that passed, Estes started experimenting with other types of recovery units and body styles per se. So in the early 70s, a gentleman named Larry Ranger took G. Harry Stein's design of the K2 Mark and he updated it, I guess is the appropriate term. And but it was when it was done, the rocket looked the same physically. So they didn't really want to call it anything else other than a Mark, but internally it was different. That was the big difference. But during that transition, Estes had a few variations on what it was called. First it was, originally we had the K2 Mark. Then they called it the K2A Mark. Just a single Mark. Then, after a while, they realized, you know what, it's different enough. Let's just call it the Mark II. But they kept the K2A designation because by then the K3 and K4 had already been in production. So it's just interesting that evolution of the name and the face cards of how they were labeled with K2, K2A, Mark, Mark II. But today we're going to be building the K2A Mark II. Now the face card I've got on this particular kit just says Mark. And this is one of the variations I was referring to. But, okay, so you're like, so what is the difference? Well, the big difference is that it's a split body tube design. Instead of the nose cone ejecting off, the separation occurs in the midpoint of the body. So the nose cone gets glued onto the upper section, and then the upper section will depart on ejection. You could use that upper stage as a payload bay if you wanted to. Not a whole lot you can fit into a BT-30, but hey, you never know. But at least it gives you that option. The fins are the same balsa nose cone, same basic rocket when all is said and done, but the internals are different with the way the shock cord is going to mount and that split body design. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this opened up on the bench, get the camera turned around, and get to working on the K2A Mark II. Okay, here we have the Estes K2A Mark II. Again, face card just listed as a Mark, but you'll notice it is a rear ejection and streamer recovery. And the rocket itself physically and structurally looks the same, but it is different, in fact. So let's go ahead and get this opened up. And now I will tell you ahead of time, there is, I believe, at least the shock cord. I don't know if there's anything else in the inventory that I don't have bagged, but that will easily be sourced down the road before we actually get to that point of the build. Let's go and get everything out of the bag. Okay. Okay. Here's everything out of the bag, including the instructions. And of course, now the instructions call it the K2 Mark II. So yet another variation on the naming of it. So I believe those are our decals. So, okay, well, let's go ahead and do a quick inventory, and then we'll get to constructing the K2A Mark II. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started into our inventory. First thing, we have letter A. We've got the balsa nose cone. This is the BNC-30E, which is the same one that we built on the K2 Mark, our last rocket build, same nose cone. Letter B is going to be our longer of the two body tubes. This is a 3.5-inch BT-30 tube. Letter C is the shorter of the two. This is 2 3/4 inch. In fact, it's the same length as an engine itself. Letter D is going to be our coupler. Now this is actually something that I, in preparation for the kit, had to make up myself. I took a couple BT 20s and kind of thickened them and built them up into an engine block / coupler. So that'll suffice. Letter E is going to be our shock cord, which I don't have. I will secure one before we finish the build, but as of now, I don't have one just yet. But I've got dozens to choose from, so we'll get one later. Both F and G, we don't have, and I'm not going to do them at all. That's just our streamer and our tape disc that will attach the streamer to the shock cord. Again, I don't store rockets with recovery units inside, so we're not going to even mess with the streamer. Our decals is next, and for the decals, letter H, we've got the wraparound, I'm not sure what you call the scallops or what, but this is going to be the main body decal that's going to transition the black to the gold. And we've also got a Estes decal that will go on our fin. Okay, and then letter I is our fins. 3 fins, just like the last kit we did with the Mark. It's the same exact fins, pre-cut from Semrock, beautifully done, and we'll do them the same way we did before. We'll get those sheeted with some plastic and make them look good. Letter J is our launch lug. And my launch lug has apparently rolled off the bench. There it is. Found it. So there it is. Got it. And finally, we've got our shock cord mount. It's going to require 2 of them. I've got them right here, pre-cut, ready to go, because we have to attach the shock cord to the upper portion and to the lower portion of the body tube. So with that, let's go ahead and clear the board, and we will get construction started on the K-2A Mark II. Okay, the first step will be gluing the nose cone into the upper body tube portion. Now you can identify that with the other one as the top one. The one we're going to glue is the longer of the two. So we're going to take, let's do a quick dry fit here. Nice and snug. Look how flush that is. That is beautiful. So we're going to take it off. Going to get some wood glue. I'm examining the ends to see if one end is worse than the other. And if there is, I'm going to use that end to glue to this, because this is going to be left open where all we'll see forever. But this will be sealed off. So let's seal off the dirty end, so to speak. So I'm just going to take my wood glue. So I'm going to draw a thin bead around that. I'm going to take a Q-tip to help spread it a little bit better. And we'll just simply take our nose cone and insert it in. There, just like that. We'll rotate it a little bit to spread the glue. There we go. That way when we start painting and priming and all this good stuff, this will eventually sand out to be seamless, so it'll look like one piece. All right, so we're just going to let that dry for a bit now. Okay, while the nose cone is drying, I want to go ahead and share with you a couple things. One is we're going to sheet the fins with the 0.010 inch polystyrene sheets, as I typically do. In fact, the same manner in which I did the original K2 Mark in our last build. However, this is like step 4 or 5 in the kit. Steps 2, 3, and 4 maybe are attaching the 2 tubes, the upper and the lower, with shock cord mounts and gluing, just doing things that I don't want to do until the rocket is painted. One of the other things is gluing in the tube coupler. I want to wait until the rocket is complete, because that's just one more thing I'm going to have to mask off. So we're going to wait till everything's painted, and then we'll glue those sub-assemblies together. So that fast forwards us to the fins. I'm going to go ahead and spray these plastic sheets with some 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. I'm going to just run a coat down the plastic, let it cure for a minute or two, and then we're just going to lay our fins on these sheets. And once we get one down, I'll cut it out, show you how I do that, and we'll come back and we'll sheet the other sides. So let me run a quick coat down here, and I'll show you how we put the fins in place. Okay, just came in from spraying this side of the
plastic sheet. You can tell when it's ready when you can touch it with your knuckles and it doesn't stick anymore, and we're not quite there yet. So we'll come back to it. One of the nice things I like about this technique is, I mean, you probably should do some fin preparation, but you really don't need to. In fact, this case, I'm not going to. There's no dents or dings. The fins are in great shape. I'll just blow off the dust and it's ready to lay down. That's why I really like this technique, because it just takes so much work out of the preparation. So let's go ahead and lay this on the sheet. Okay, just like that. Take our second fin. Okay, we'll lay it right next to it. And our third fin. Okay, there we go. Now, just that quickly, we can go ahead and cut these out. I'll cut one out, show you, and then I'll do the other half in the same manner, and then I'll show you the final result. You can use the fin itself as your cutting guide. Just follow along the edge of the fins. And it's okay if the knife strays a little bit away from the wood. You don't want it to go into the wood, obviously, but if it strays away a little bit, that's okay, because we're going to sand these fins anyways. Let me get this side a little bit more. There we go. And there's one clean surface fin. Whoops, right there. Okay, so I'm going to do the other two off camera. Then I'm going to coat the other side, sheet them, cut them out, and I'll show you the final result when all three are done, because then they'll be ready for sanding. Okay, quick update. The nose cone is completely dry, and I've also finished off the fins. Not only did I sheet both sides, but I went ahead and rounded off four of the sides, obviously leaving the root flat so it'll glue nicely to the tubes. But I do want to show you this before I take it out, but I'm going to take it out of the paint booth now and spray it with the gray primer, and then wipe it down with lacquer thinner just to fill in the grooves and to help fill in any grains that might fill in a lot easier than having to wait for sealer to dry and putty to dry. So I'm going to take care of that, and then we'll come back. And I'm also going to do the same thing to the lower tube. I want to spray it down to fill in the spiral grooves there as well. So I'll come right back when everything is sprayed and cleaned off. Okay, quick update on the painting progress. Everything has been primered in gray, and it came out wonderful. The spiral lines are completely gone. No sign of them whatsoever, and we've still got more primer to go. I'm going to put a coat of white primer now over the gray. And then for the upper portion, same thing. Gray primer's all done. Now, after it was said and done, I did some sanding of the gray primer. I did sand a little too deep at one point, and I got down into the cardboard, and it created like a little divot. So I filled that divot in with some red, the Bondo glazing putty. So once that dries completely, I'll sand that down flush with the surface, and then it'll be ready for its white primering. White primer, probably 2 coats of that. Then we'll do a final wet sand, and it'll be ready for the final color coat. So we'll come back and check in after it's been white primered, and we're just ready for the final base coat. All right, we'll be right back. Okay, it's time to mark the locations for the fins on the lower half of the body tube. As you can see, we've got it here. If you remember from the last video when we built the K2, I made this little marking guide. It fits a BT30 perfectly, and it's already got the marks for the 3 locations. Once the BT30 is primed and thickened up, it comes out to be 63 millimeters in diameter. So I broke that up into 3 sections of 21 millimeters each. So I'm going to simply wrap my guide around the lower body tube. Again, this was a little homemade one that I made. we'll take a piece of masking tape to keep that secure. And we're just going to take a pencil and I'm going to make a mark at each of those 21 millimeter locations. Okay, then we can remove our template, our guide here. And then I'm going to take the Estes tube marking guide and use it so we can draw our lines full length. So let me get this in position, our first one here. And we're just going to extend that line the full length of the tube. Okay, we'll go to the next one. And when you do this, you definitely want to use a pencil. And the reason being, if you use an ink pen, the inks can interact negatively with your paints. So you don't want to do anything that'll cause a chemical reaction to ruin your paint job. So stick with the graphite lead pencils. Okay, there we have it. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some masking tape and I'm going to tape down the line. Doesn't have to be exact, but close enough on that line that, and another little trick, let me show you. We're going to cut this tape in half. Probably should have done that before I laid it down, but it's okay. And we'll take the straight piece and we'll come over and we'll lay this piece down for the next line. And what we're doing is we're basically drawing a frame around where the fins are going to go. That way we can clean up that area back down to the bare cardboard. So when we glue the fins on, it'll be a much more secure joint than applying the the fins onto paint or primer. Okay. So we'll get our third one down here. And then we can come up and I figure about 1/8 of an inch should be good. They're 1/16 inch wide fins. So if we draw a little beyond that to say right there. Well, that's not very straight. There we go. And then I'm just going to do that on the remaining 2 fin areas. And then I'm going to wrap one across that will be, see, for example, let me show you. This fin's going to fit right into that area right there. And then I'm going to tape off the back side. Then I'm going to take a Q-tip and some lacquer thinner. And I'm just going to scrub this all the way back down to the main cardboard. And that'll be our location. So let me go ahead and get this done, cleaned up, and then we'll come in and glue the fins on. Okay, you can see now the exposed cardboard through where we masked off, and then I took a Q-tip and just rubbed with lacquer thinner until we finally got all the way through the paint layers down to the bare cardboard. So now we can go ahead and remove our masking. And it should be pretty apparent where our areas masked off were, but we are going to have to redraw our lines. That's why I've still got my pencil and my marking guide here. This is proving to be a little more difficult than I thought it'd be. There we go, everything's stuck pretty well. I think the lacquer thinner kind of created a bond between the tape and the underlying surface. I'm going to remove that inner tape that is protecting the inside of the body. We'll get that, and that should free up some of our stripes. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now you can see our exposed cardboard. Let me set the fins aside just for a moment. We'll come back to them here in a second. And let's redraw our lines. Okay. So let's find our previous lines up here. Okay. And third and final one. Okay. Now let me get the fins back. And we've got our wood glue, and we can start gluing them in. And I like to glue all of them on at the same time, using a technique of letting them tack up, and then while we wait, we can do the next fin and so on and so forth. So, okay, we're going to start with one fin here. We're going to bead a glue down it, smear it to spread it. Okay, we'll just randomly pick one here. Let me start here. Okay, we'll roll it a little bit to spread it. And let's go ahead and use our pencil to hold our fins up. Okay, let's take our next fin here. In case you are wondering, this is actually my second coat. I did the first coat off camera, just to see if I can maybe build a little bit stronger bond. I've heard about some people doing that. I'm going to try it on this one. Okay, lay this in position up against our reference line. Okay, and one more to go. And we'll roll that out. Okay, now fin number one should be tacked up and ready to go. So let's go ahead and grab our first fin here, lay it. We want to put the apex of that corner right there, that little dog leg, at the very base of the tube. So we'll drop it into place and push it into position right along our reference line. Oh yeah, it's tacky. It holds. It feels pretty solid already. So maybe that second coat is not such a bad idea. Okay, get from behind. Make sure we're perpendicular as well as parallel. Okay, now we can go to fin number two, which should be tacked up by now as well. Oh, that grabbed nicely. Okay. Okay, that looks good. And now we can go to fin number three. Okay, there you can see our perfectly triangulated fin arrangement. They're perpendicular to the tube and then parallel with the length of the tube as well. All right, let's do a stand test to see if it looks somewhat even. be honest with you, it feels like this one's a little long. Let's see if I can, if it's not, okay, yeah, we can work with it just a little bit. There, that feels more even all the way around. Okay, excellent. Okay, do one more check on all the fins. All right, excellent. Okay, we're gonna let this dry, come back and do our fillets and install our lunch lug. Okay, the fins are securely dried, and one thing of note, the launch lug is to be glued up against one fin, like that in the joint, and then flush with the top of the tube. So I went ahead and made a mark on the fin at where the bottom end of the launch lug would be. So that way I don't over glue that side, and I'll know from here down, I'm actually going to use a Q-tip to really press that fillet in deeper, because I don't want any interference with the launch lug once everything's dry. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my Tight Bond Quick and Thick, which is a wonderful fillet tool. We're going to do the launch lug last. So let's go ahead and do our lug down this side. Simply just run a bead down that joint. I'm going to gently roll the front end over to get a little bit of a fillet on the nose, like that. And then we're just going to pull this fillet down with our finger. Just like that. Beautiful. Okay, now we're just going to do that 5 more times. Okay, the launch lug is dried. All the fillets are pretty much dried, but since the launch lug is hardened enough up, we can go ahead and put in fillets on it as well. So we'll get our Tight Bond back open. And this time I'm going to draw the glue out to the front and away from the tube completely. We just run a bead down this joint. Now this bead needs to be a little bit thicker because it needs to fit into that crevice that's generated by the curvature of the launch lug itself. So okay. Well, it's pretty good right out of the gate. Clean that up just a little bit. And we can also clean up the back just a little bit using our Q-tip as a tool. Nice. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit on the front end of the part that's exposed out ahead of the fin. There we go. Okay, so that wraps up the fin and the fin fillets. Now we just have to let everything dry, which is, as I've said many times, the hardest part of modeling, waiting for glue and or paint to dry. I'm going to set that horizontally so it doesn't want to flow on us any direction. But off camera, I'm going to go ahead and get this primed. I'll show you the rocket after it's primed, but before we paint it. So I'm going to do a layer of gray primer and then a layer of white primer before the base coat. So we'll come right back after that's done. Okay, I want to do one last little segment on the paint before we actually take it out to the paint booth. The final coat of primer has been applied, and additionally, I just want to show you, you might be able to see some red tint inside of there. That is the Bondo glazing and spot putty that I applied to the spiral lines on the launch lug. So I don't want to omit that. I want to get it nice and smooth as well. And then I went over the entire rocket with 600 grit wet dry sandpaper prior to the paint. So it's all smoothed out. It feels like glass, and we're going to take it out, and initially we're going to paint the entire rocket yellow, And then once it dries, we'll come back in and we'll put the black segments over top of the yellow. So I might do a segment after the yellow, we'll see. But otherwise, you're gonna see a rocket here with color here pretty soon. Stand by. Okay, as you can see, the yellow is done. Here is the upper portion of the rocket. Came out beautiful, smooth, no spiral lines whatsoever, so it's ready to go. The lower stage is still drying because I had to spray the body black while the fins are masked off. In fact, I can show you real quick. There is the lower section. I've still got the masking tape on the fins, so they'll be yellow when all is said and done. But while that dries, that gives us an opportunity to put our decal on the upper stage. The upper stage is where the black body transitions to yellow via this wraparound decal. Fairly straightforward. Just going to wrap it around the base. And we may have to do a little stretching, but I don't think too much. But we'll get them to join there in the middle. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this started in the water. And this decal paper does not take long at all, just a few seconds really. I've got my Q-tip ready to go, and I've got a paper towel ready to blotch out some of the moisture. Yeah, it's already starting to break free. There we go. Okay. Just gonna lay this. We get a little water wrapped around there. Okay, we're just going to lay this on and pull the backing out from underneath it. Okay, now we'll gently manipulate it right up against the bottom edge there. Okay, a little bit of stretching to try to close in that gap a little bit. We'll just keep manipulating it. Just gentle squeezes. Okay, let's start to work out some of those. Let's use the Q-tip. Work out some of that water. See, little by little, we're closing up that gap. It's almost to a fine point. So we'll just keep massaging it, working it, stretching it, and we'll get there eventually. Okay, that was a good one. Even better. Okay, we're almost there on that gap. Okay, I'm getting to the point where I start to feel a little resistance and I don't want to tear it. So you do need to be very gentle, but so far so good. But if you reach a point where you think, you know what, that's good enough, I don't want to risk tearing or ripping, I'd call that probably decent enough. Yeah, I think we're at that point where I'm going to call it good, for fear of any damage to the decal. Okay, so that came out pretty darn good. I like that. That looks really sharp. Okay, so once the bottom portion of the rocket dries, we're able to remove the masking tape and then join these together with the coupler, get the shock cord on, and we're about done with the rocket. So let me set that aside to dry for a little bit, and we'll be right back. Okay, just a couple more things to wrap up before we finish the building of the K-2A Mark II. One thing is we're going to put some decals on. We just did the decal on the body tube. Now that the lower stage is dry, you can see how that came out nicely. We're going to apply some decals to the lower fins. We want to orient it in a way that the launch lug is on the back side. So we're going to have these two fins here, the ones that'll have the decals. I've got a little Estes decal and a little Mark decal. Estes is going to go on the left, Mark's going to go on the right. So we can go ahead and get that started in the water. And once we get the decals on, while that's drying, we can go ahead and assemble the shock cord mounts. I've got a couple of the trifold mounts right here. We can make that up and then get that installed into the coupler / engine block, and we can start gluing that in as well. Okay, that should be good. These decals don't take long to release. Okay, I'm going to put it just centered and below the body tube. Let's see if this, yeah, it's loose. Let me just get it on first and then we can adjust it. Okay. See how easy that slid right off? Let's a little bit. Let's get some moisture out. Okay, we'll roll the water out. Any wiggles? There we go. Okay, so get the other started. And we'll have it directly across, same height and centered as well. No, not quite yet ready. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, those came out pretty good, I think. All right, now we can set that aside to just let those decals set a little bit better. Let's go ahead and get our trifold mounts, and we'll just go ahead and install them on each end of the shock cord, and then we'll glue them into the coupler. Okay, let me get my wood glue. And let me get a paper towel. We'll do this on the paper towel. You can use wax paper as well. That's probably better, but I've got this here handy next to me. Okay, so I'm going to invert that. I'm going to run a bead of glue on 1 and 2 and 3. And just because I don't want to make too big of a mess, you could use your finger. I normally do. I just don't want to get too messy right now. So we'll spread that with a Q-tip. Okay, we'll lay one end. You can see the moisture is curling up the paper on us. Okay, and we'll fold one over onto 2. Yeah. Like that. Let's put in a little strip of glue down the cord. Okay, that's one side. I'll go ahead and do this other side off camera, and when it's dry, we'll come back and glue it into the coupler. Okay, well, we've still got the shock cords drying. I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of this time to insert our coupler. One thing to note, I've already pre-marked it, but you want to mark the aft end or the bottom side of the coupler at the 1/4 inch mark. So there's 1/4 inch up from the base. That's going to be how far down this is going to glue into the body tube. That obviously is not centered. That's because we want more sticking out that the upper stage can slide onto. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and install this. This should be pretty easy. Still gentle around the decals as they're still setting. But let me run a small bead of glue. Actually, I put a little too much in, so that should be enough right there. And I'll take a Q-tip. You can use your finger, but I don't want to get any on the paint. So we're just going to use that Q-tip to spread the glue around inside the tube. And we're going to take our coupler and we're going to slide it in up to that mark that we made. There, just like that. So I'm going to rotate it to the back actually, so that seam is not visible from the front. There we go. Makes it look a little bit cleaner. Okay, now let me pull out our shock cord, which should be dry by now. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of a pre-curl into it. Let's let that set up for a little bit more. So we'll go ahead and glue the the upper stage in. Now this we want to go in as far as we can, so we're not going to interfere with the shoulder of the lower stage. So, okay, let's put some glue. On there. Okay, probably use my pinky because it's a little thinner. We're just going to press that up against the inside of the tube. Okay, I think it's already set. Okay, now we'll take the other end, put a little pre-curl into it. Get some glue on there, spread it with a Q-tip. Okay, and this is going to go right inside of our coupler. And you can see it kind of sticks out below the coupler just a little bit, and the engine will kind of compress that, but technically you could have it sticking out a little bit on the top, but aesthetically I don't think that would look too nice. So there we go. Okay, we're gonna let that sit up for a minute. Okay, all the glue is set, everything is dry. It is time to put things together and make it look complete, because it is complete. So let's go ahead and take our upper tube here and let's just stuff the shock cord in. Actually, let's see if I can maybe fold up. This is kind of how like I do it when I fly. I just fold it over itself into a smaller little ball, and that makes things easier to cram in. All right, we'll slip that over the coupler. Little twist, and voila, our K-2A Mark II is complete. That is a stunning model when it all said and done. Beautiful, beautiful kit. I love that transition from the black to the yellow. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching me build it as much as I enjoyed building it. And we've got a lot more rockets to come. This was the K2. Next up will be the K3 and the space plane. And I'm looking forward to that. So with that, everybody, I'm going to let you go. Thanks so much for watching. God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.